So it's a tough moment for a lot of people, everybody. I mean, who wants to pay more for their basic needs?
It's not just our energy bills, too. Everything is more expensive, whether it's our insurance, whatnot, and everything seems to kind of pile up on each other right now. Now, that is not excusing Rhode Island Energy in any way, shape, or form, too. They knew all these headwinds were coming.
And thank you for joining us for this episode of Lively. I'm Jim Hummel, joined this time by Bill Bartholomew, host of the Bartholomewtown Podcast, and former Rhode Island State Representative Barbara Ann Fenton-Fung. If you are worried about energy costs as we head into the winter months, you have got company. At the same time, Rhode Island Energy is asking for a significant rate increase to cover what it says are higher distribution costs. Barbara Ann, let's start with you. We've got a lot going on here. Yeah. There was a survey done by the University of New Hampshire. 78% of the people around here are worried, probably including all three of us.
All three of us at the table here. And there's so much going on in the energy field right now. And why? I mean, it's not just our energy bills, too. Everything is more expensive, whether it's our insurance, whatnot, and everything seems to kind of pile up on each other right now. What was really interesting in the past few weeks is that, I don't know if you caught it, right before Thanksgiving, all of a sudden the federal government gave up their fight against the wind in the Revolution Wind Project. Now, there's a lot going on. We're looking at how are we going to actually provide energy to this region? Even if, with the environmental push for more electrification, we have some headwinds there. One, our grid is incredibly old, okay? When we're looking at what we're going to need when we bring more of the artificial intelligence online and the amount of electricity that requires, we're going to need to do massive infrastructure upgrades. And we all know that those are expensive, so we've got that. Also, too, in New England, almost 87% of our electricity is generated by fossil fuels. So, and the volatile price of natural gas, there's a lot going on pressure-wise that way. Now, that is not excusing Rhode Island Energy in any way, shape, or form, too. They knew all these headwinds were coming. And I think we have to do a much better job when we're preparing. How are we going to fund our infrastructure? And that's what a lot of these bills are, is looking at how to pay out the infrastructure grid updates. But also, too, how are we going to make sure that those who are elderly, those who are on very fixed incomes, don't get priced out of their house and unfortunately, become unhoused?
Completely agree. And it's part of a much larger concert of economic problems that people are facing right now. And energy is obviously vital. It's like food. You can't just say, forget about it and live reasonably comfortably. So I think, look, the reality is the prices aren't what they were, 5 and change just a couple of years ago. So we have seen the costs in traditional oil and in propane go down from a couple of years ago. Still, purchasing power is down. It feels down. So it's a tough moment for a lot of people, everybody. I mean, who wants to pay more for their basic needs at this point?
Yeah, and so when we're looking at, everybody wants to make sure they have their 4 iPhones in the house being charged, and, and everybody's got 2 TVs going on. There's a whole lot of demand. And when we're looking at how, right now, this region is still heavily dependent on natural gas. There's that interesting project coming out of the New York area where they're trying to get the Constitution pipeline to come up this way. The cynic in me wonders if there's an interesting timing between trying to get the expansion of that pipeline by the Trump administration and then backing off on the Revolution Wind, almost like we'll let you do this if you let us come by. The timing seems interesting anyway on that one. But also, you just got a really volatile natural gas market right now. So you've got a lot of headwinds in the energy thing. It comes down to, though, when you're trying to pay your bills and say, all right, how much going to have to kind of budget each month? Rhode Island Energy needs to do a much better job at making sure that those credits come online faster, and that we have realistic conversations about how we're going to maybe share the costs of all these infrastructure upgrades, which for you guys in Barrington, in East Providence, you guys lose power all the time.
You sneeze and the lights go out. But it's interesting, and people should know this. When you get your bill from Rhode Island Energy, formerly National Grid, I go back to Narragansett Electric, cost of the power and then the distribution cost.
That's right.
And that's what Rhode Island Energy is saying. We need to make upgrades on our infrastructure that you were talking about. The timing couldn't have been worse. They've said it's been 5 or 6 years since they've done this. They filed for a rate increase for next year, and it's pretty significant. 5% on the electric side, 20% on the gas side. Yeah. So, I mean, that's $300-400 we're talking about potentially. This has got to go through the PUC, but, I mean, I think most people out there, the Public Utilities Commission reviews this, they don't view them as any backstop at all. It's just, it goes through.
Absolutely. That's exactly right. look, the United States is an outlier in the way that we have a hodgepodge of utility commissions around this country that don't necessarily work well together or talk together at all. We have a changing dynamic. You mentioned artificial intelligence. That's one part of it, but just an overall changing dynamic of what energy is going to be used for and the water involved there. So we're looking way into the future. But quickly, I'll just say this. I remember there was a campaign, I don't know, maybe 4 or 5 years ago, when it was still National Grid, nationalize the grid. That was the argument.
Instead of these regional hodgepodges,
And nationalize it where it becomes a function of the government. We don't have Rhode Island Energy anymore. You don't have a profit model in energy. On paper, that makes a lot of sense, and it would seem to be the right thing to do. The question you have to ask yourself is, do you want the Peter Alviti of energy running electricity, or is this better in the private sector's hands?
You just turned off everybody in Rhode Island right there. Like, not happening.
For nationalize the grid. I'm just saying that
was a discussion.
That was a discussion, and it brought up that question of, what kind of society do we want to have?
Yeah.
And is there a way to function better locally and nationally? The answer is yes. It's probably not the extreme of the government takes over the grid, but I don't like what we're seeing right now. I don't think anybody does.
Well, and you just take supply-demand economics. So if we have so much demand for natural gas, they can jack up the prices easier, okay? Now, the argument by the environmental caucuses will be like, all right, well, we need to bring more solar, more wind, and diversify that in order to help create more competition and drive prices down. It's more complex than that. It's certainly not that simple. But when you still take a step back, we're talking about what's the academic view. If you're sitting in your house today in Central Falls, if you're sitting in your house today on the west side of Providence, you're trying to think. I mean, we have people who, I work at the hospital, and they come in and they're heating their home by turning on their ovens.
Yeah.
Okay, and there's a reality to that right now. I'm really frustrated at the federal government, the way they've really hurt LIHEAP. There's amazing organizations here locally, like the Catholic Diocese, and to keep their heat on. They just had their concert. There's different funds trying to help people, and there's certainly resources out there. But the bigger picture is having a discussion of how, the regular family in Rhode Island cannot afford these types of energy costs on top of healthcare costs, which we talk about.
But going back to what you said about Revolution Wind, it's interesting. We haven't heard anything, and we're really banking Rhode Island and Connecticut, 80% done. Trump steps in. Now they back off. It's a crisis a week, so maybe we're kind of out of sight, out of mind. But that's really going to help the grid in the long run when it comes online.
It's going to be part of sort of a series of different methods to produce energy, right? And we have a unique situation here with the opportunity to do offshore wind, and we have a workforce that is now trained for it, and we have an economy that has in large part been staked on this blue economy notion. So it's not just the implications on the electricity. These are broad economic ripple effects that come from the back and forth on whether or not we should have offshore wind. I think there's arguments to be made all over the place on how much we should be doing that versus other methods of renewables or non-renewables. But the bottom line is we have to diversify, and we have to start the infrastructure.
But it seems like a no-brainer here because, look, people talk about the high rates initially because you're bringing it in from offshore and the net metering and all that. And the promise, the pledge is it's going to come down. These projects were so far in, it made no sense to stop them ultimately. Now, I don't know about permitting on the new ones. They're talking about some of them offshore in other spots.
New Jersey, Martha's Vineyard.
And certainly under this administration, probably not going through.
No, but I would just kind of seeing the timing here with the Trump administration, there always seems to be let's make a deal. Let's make a deal somewhere. Right? And I
Kathy Hochul in New York, right?
Completely. And so you start, and I think Connecticut's moving a little more that way too. So again, I'm just a cynic. All right. You see one thing come through and all of a sudden the federal government backed off on Revolution.
The final thing is, in the short term, there's been a whole discussion about potential rate relief. January, February, March, Rhode Island Energy had pledged to something. They yanked it back. The governor has a competing plan. Do you have any confidence that the ratepayers are going to get some type of relief this winter?
Not at all.
Okay.
And also, these effects, this is 2026, the rate increases.
Now.
But for now, right here, right now, I don't think so. I mean, we'll see.
You think so?
It's an election year. I think so.
Oh, election
just saying,
year.
I think that there might
be
some.
At it
they'll find some money. They'll find some money.
All right. To be continued.
Absolutely.
All right. Thank you for joining us for this episode of Lively right here on Ocean State Media. Subscribe to us on YouTube and tell us what you think in the comments section below the video.